Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wandering Podcast, where we take advisement from outside the box. I'm Rihanna Ritter, your host. I'm an intuitive, sexuality, and authentic expression coach. Are you an accomplished professional who plays the part of having it all figured out? Who's strong for everyone else, but feels lonely, misunderstood, like you can't tell anybody the truth about how stressed you are, how not passionate you are about your life and all that you've created? I guide my clients to deep, lasting fulfillment. I re-engage them with their bodies, their pleasure, their desire. I help them align to enjoy fulfillment and prosperity in all areas of their lives.
Today, my guest is Mike Robbins. He's a speaker, coach, and author. He's written 5 books, his latest being We're All in This Together. Welcome, Mike. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to talk to you and everybody who's listening and watching.
Yeah. So how did you become an author? I mean, you know how hard it is to write a book.
I do. You know how hard it is to write a book. Somehow I decided to do it 5 times, which I'm still not quite sure if that makes me interesting or crazy or a little bit of both.
Absolutely. So what got you excited about writing and motivated you to see it through?
You know, I mean, I've been doing this. This is the beginning of year 25 for me as a coach and a speaker. And my first book came out in 2007. So I've been writing for a while. But my journey is kind of an interesting one in that I grew up here in California, where I still live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was a baseball player all growing up. I was really into it. Pretty good at it. I actually got drafted right out of high school by the New York Yankees. Didn't end up signing a contract with the Yankees at that time, because I got an opportunity to play baseball in college at Stanford, which is about an hour from where I grew up in Oakland. Went to Stanford, played there. Then I got drafted out of Stanford by the Kansas City Royals, and I did sign a pro baseball contract. And I go into the minor leagues, as you do in pro baseball. I'm trying to work my way up to get to the major leagues. My 3rd season, still in the minors. I go out to pitch one night. I think I had just turned 23, and I throw one pitch. I tear ligaments in my elbow. I blow my arm out. So I started playing baseball when I was 7. I'm 23 years old now. I get hurt. 2 years, 3 surgeries later, I have to retire from baseball. Don't know what the heck I'm going to do with my life, because I'd gotten an education, but never with any thought of. But what had happened though, when I was in college, I got really depressed. Like suicidally depressed, which was confusing and scary and all the things. And there's a lot of mental illness in my family. And I remember at the time being really scared. And this was the mid 90s. People weren't talking a lot about mental health, especially if you're a young guy playing baseball. That wasn't right.
Yeah.
But I found myself, in addition to going to therapy and getting on some medication, which saved my life and was really helpful, I also was just asking a lot of deeper questions, even at a really young age, like, what the hell is going on? What is all of this? And I just was drawn to spirituality and metaphysics and meditation, all these things. It's like, I don't know why I was drawn to them, but I was. And I would wander into bookstores looking for books that I could read that might help me. But I also had this weird sense. And again, super young, I'm like, I think I'm supposed to do that. I'm like, that? I don't even know how people do that. There was no, there were no podcasts back then. There was no social media. It was like, I would look at the books and go, who are these authors? And they were all like PhD in psychology, or they'd been on television. I mean, anyway, so that's just a long, rambly way that ultimately I did in the late 90s get a job working for a tech company, but was fascinated by and passionate about personal growth myself and continuing to try to heal from my big life change and coming through some of my mental health challenges. But the more I would learn, the more I just kept having this sense of like, I think I'm supposed to write about this and talk about this. And so I got laid off in 2000 when the dot-com bubble burst and I lost my job. And I had a mentor of mine ask me, if you could do anything, what would you do? And I was like, well, I would write and speak and coach people. And he's like, you should do that. I'm like, now? And he said, yeah. And I was like, I'm 26 years old and I don't know how you do that. And who the hell's going to listen to me? But he's like, well, you'll figure it out. And like, almost 25 years later, I've been writing, I've been speaking, I've been coaching for, the last 2.5 decades. And, that's a long answer to your simple question, but that's kind of what got me on the path. And then the process of writing books and doing all the things I've done since then has been a whole different journey, but definitely an interesting one.
Wow, that's really cool. Like the imposter syndrome that follows you around, like at 26, who's gonna listen to me? I mean, I think anybody who's wanting to coach, write, or speak is gonna come up against that feeling.
For sure. I do think, I mean, again, I don't know what it's like to be starting that today, whether you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s, 50s. I do think the good news and bad news from what I can see, just being involved in this type of work for all these years, the good news about today, there are so many different ways to put yourself out there and share your thoughts and ideas with people and see if they resonate, right? You can have a podcast, you can post on social media. I mean, like, you don't have to, it wasn't the case 25 years ago, for better or worse, when I started. The challenging part is, like, everybody's a coach, everybody's an influencer, everybody's a, you know what I mean? So not everybody, but a lot of people, there's a lot of noise. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. There's just a lot, even for myself and people who've been doing this for a long time. It's like, oh my gosh, we were literally just on a call earlier this morning with our team now that we've recently, who does some social media stuff. And I'm like, I'd like to think I can just share from my mind and my heart. But it's like, how to break through the noise, how to get to where people can hear the message. And it changes all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like the strategy, the marketing approach to it, the way to reach people and have it resonate. It would be wonderful. And in some cases it does. You just put out a really wonderful idea and it magically goes viral and everyone's like, oh my gosh, we need to talk to her, or we need to talk to him, or, you know, but that's not usually the way it plays out. So it's an interesting dynamic on that front, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, it's funny with social media in particular, people they want things that are changing and flashing and moving fast. And like, that's how you grab their attention. And as a coach, like, you're kind of trying to teach not to.
Totally. and it's like, and I'll say this again, I want to say, I mean, I'll turn 51 next week. And I love technology and I think it's amazing. And I love that you and I can have this conversation with you at your house and me at my house, and people all over the world can watch this or listen. Like, that's amazing. And I sometimes joke with people. I'm like, I didn't get into like the broadcast production business. When I started this, I want to coach, I want to write, I want to speak. Like, yeah, maybe if I was promoting something, I would go on television if I was so fortunate, or I'd stand up on stage, which is what I do a lot of, and speak to people. But I didn't realize, like, oh no, you got to create a studio in your house, and then you got audio and video and edit it, and it's got to be catchy, and it's got to have, it's like, what, like, yeah. I mean, again, and that's a different business than I had signed up for. But like a lot of things in life, if you raise kids or it's most things, you're like, this sounds like a good idea. And then you do it and you're like, oh, shit, there's a lot more involved in this than I realized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, part of being a coach is having to sell all the time. Right. Yeah. And so did you have an easy relationship with that at the beginning? Like, how did you figure it out?
Well, a couple things. So one of my mentors is an amazing man, author, teacher named Dan Millman. Dan wrote a great book called Way of the Peaceful Warrior that was one of the seminal books that I read in my early 20s that both really deeply impacted me, but also I was like, I want to do that. And I was fortunate enough to meet Dan. He used to live here in the Bay Area where I grew up. And I remember him saying this thing to me. I mean, I don't think I'd even started my business yet. I was just in that, I want to coach, I want to write, I want to speak. And he said, listen, Mike, here's something that I've learned. This is probably true about life and business in general, but especially in this space of teaching. And he's like, you got to be really good at the work, and you got to be really good at telling people about the work. And he said, most people are good at one and not the other, or they're better at one than the other. So if you're really good at the work, but you're not good at telling people about the work, you don't get to do the work that much. But if you're really good, maybe some people will tell other people and it'll word of mouth, but it's hard. He's like, if you're really good at telling people about the work, but you're not that good at the work, then a lot of people will show up and they'll go, oh, he sucks, or that's not very good. And then they'll tell other people, don't bother. It's right. And I remember him saying that, and I was like, oh, interesting. And I've always personally been much better, I think, not at the work than telling people about the work. And so I definitely had a challenge in the early days and over the years around the marketing, promoting, selling of it. One of the ways that for me really worked and ultimately had my business go in a certain direction was like in the early days when I was coaching people. I mean, I was young, so I was attracting a lot of other young clients. Life coaching was kind of a weird thing 25 years ago, right? And I would, I'm charging like $200 a month or whatever the heck for, it was, but that was a lot of money in those days, especially for some of the people that I was working with. And then we'd get into stuff and I'd find out, not surprisingly, like they were in debt or they were struggling financially or whatever. And I'm like, I kind of had a weird sort of moral dilemma. Like, should I really be charging these people a couple $100 a month when they're like barely paying their rent? And you know what I mean? So there was that. And I also found it to be stressful to like sell to individuals, because I was, especially in the early days when I did have a lot of imposter syndrome, like, is this really valuable? Is this worth it? I really wanted to speak. That was what I was excited about. But I was like, how do you speak? I didn't have a book. Nobody knew who I was, but I did figure out a way. I made some connections. And then I was like delivering workshops and speaking for organizations or whether it was an association or a corporation or a school district. They'd have an event and they'd want a guest speaker. And I really liked that, the business model of that, because then let's say you were organizing an event and you knew me or heard me or saw me somewhere and said, hey, Mike, could you come speak at our event? Then I got to show up and speak at the event, try to inspire the people there. Whether they were inspired or not, somebody was going to pay me to speak. And I wasn't there to sell anything to anybody. If they really liked me or they wanted to find out more about my coaching, or eventually once I had like a website and a newsletter, and then eventually once I had a book, like they could get those things, but I wasn't there to like push that on them per se. I was just there to inspire them, and that's been my business model for most of the last 25 years. Like tomorrow I get on a plane and I fly to Dallas and I speak at a big event for Comcast on Thursday. I'm not selling anything to anybody in that room. They've already paid me. My job is to show up and deliver value. And if I do, maybe some people will follow me on social media. Maybe some people will buy some books. Maybe there'll be someone else in that event, at that event, that'll come up and say, hey, we're having another event in July. Could you come? And I'm like, that would be awesome. So like, for me, that's really worked over the years, where the hustling to sell and to sign people up and to get people to click and buy. I also have always really sucked at digital marketing and like email stuff and getting people to sign up for courses and things, whether they're free or paid. Like for me personally, I just was never very good at that. I didn't have a lot of results. I have friends who are amazing at that, and they have huge followings, and they send out a post or an email and it's like everybody signs up. And I'm like, well, I must have been absent the day they passed that out in school, because I don't know how to do that, but more power to you,
Yeah. So we have to find our individual way, the thing that feels actually the most flow for us, right?
Totally. It's got to be authentic. I mean, that's the thing. So much of my work focuses on, and some of the books I've written focus on authenticity. It's like, what's authentic for you? And one other thing, and I'll just say this, and I don't mean to sound holier than thou about it, but I found even in the early days, and this is still very true, that a lot of marketing for us online, understandably to break through the noise, is marketing in a way that talks about people's pain, right? To get them to take action, so then they want what you have. And while I understand and appreciate that in general, whether we're talking about coaching or any kind of marketing, I don't like that personally. Yeah. Like it feels like I'm shaming people or we're making them feel bad. So they go, oh my God, I feel bad. I need to lose weight. I want to fall in love. I need more money. I suck. Let me hire this guy and maybe he'll help me. And even if I could potentially help people with all of that, like, again, not to sound, like I said, holier than thou, I'd rather them be attracted to me and my work and resonate with me, or hear from someone or see something that I've written or put out in the world and go, I like that, versus me go, hey, do you feel terrible about yourself? Guess what? I have the 3 secrets, but you got to pay me money to get behind this wall so I can tell you the secrets. Because I actually think, while there is a lot of good work out in the world, there's also a lot of bullshit. And like, I have signed up for those things myself and then been disappointed on the other side of it. So like, I don't want to perpetuate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much of what we're teaching and coaching is self-compassion, self-acceptance, self-love, and to like be focusing on the negative. And, we also teach about like your words are very important. Don't say that you're terrible, because then you're going to experience that. So to attract people by saying, all of those negative things.
Exactly.
And having them focus on their pain it does feel a little dirty.
Yeah.
Right?
And look, when you get into the work, if people's pain comes up or they want to talk about hard stuff, that's a different conversation than let me lead with the pain, you know. And again, look, we live in the real world. There is at some level what, you know, I mean, a marketing 101, it's like, what problem do you solve, right? And what credibility do you have to solve it? And then what's the transformation that you're offering? Being able to do those things in a clean way, in an authentic way, in a real way that does get people's attention, but doesn't, like, even like a simple thing. This happens all day, every day for me. When I'm just in my email inbox or on LinkedIn or different social platforms, I get emails from people who are pitching me on stuff. A lot of times, like, it's this one: I really love your work, it's great. And some version of like, your YouTube videos suck, like I can help you better, right? And I'm like, okay, they're probably not wrong in some sense, but I'm just like, that's actually not ingratiating yourself to me in this moment, that you're coming and telling me there's something wrong and then you can fix it, right? And again, it's a cold email. They don't know me. I get that it's a hard world and you're trying to break above the noise, but like, I'm never going to respond positively to that myself. Yeah. Even if it's accurate, even if I think there's truth to it. I'm like, I don't know you from anyone. You haven't earned the right to give me that feedback yet, because we don't have a relationship.
Yeah.
A friend of mine the other day said, I have a good friend that I've met recently and we're kind of supporting each other in the business. And I love having mentors and mastermind groups and success partners. And he said to me the other day, we communicate by voice message a lot on text, right? And I kind of gave him some, pretty direct feedback in a voice message. And I realized, gosh, we don't know each other that well. So then I responded like, hey man, was that okay? I know that was like, I'm kind of intense sometimes. Like, do I have permission? And his response back, he's like, listen, man, I'm coachable from the right people. And I was like, ooh, that's good. And then when he said it, it really resonated with me. Like, if I trust you, if I know you have my best interest in mind, if you've demonstrated that, you can be super direct with me and I will take it.
Yeah.
I love that. I thrive on that. But if I don't know you, or it's riddled with a bunch of judgment and shame and like you're overstepping and there's no permission, I'm like, yo, that's like you walking into my house without knocking on the door or ringing the doorbell or being invited over. I'm like, yo, get out of here. I didn't invite you in.
So true. So you have a podcast called We're All in This Together. You also have a book, We're All in This Together.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about those two things.
Well, so I wrote the book several years ago. I actually finished writing it in 2019. It came out right as we were going into the pandemic, which was a very interesting time to have a book called We're All in This Together come out into the world. And a lot of the work that companies bring me in to talk about, I talk a lot about appreciation and authenticity and compassion, self-compassion, but I also talk about teamwork and collaboration and like finding common ground. And for me, my work has never been political, but I have a lot of, I pay attention to what's going on politically and socially. And I found myself several years ago just looking at the state of the country and the world and going, look, I know we've been divided for a long time, but like, this is gnarly. It just feels like everything is like this side or that side or my side or your side or good or bad. And I'm like, whoa, what are we doing? And so the book, We're All in This Together, was really an attempt on my part to share what I'd learned up to that point, 20 years of working with lots of diverse teams and people, and like, but also, is there a way for us to find common ground with each other, even and especially when we disagree? And look, I erroneously thought maybe the pandemic, as awful as it was, would be the thing that would like bring us together, because we'd all be dealing collectively with this difficult situation, which I think initially it did for like a minute. And then it got worse. Like everything became politicized, even about the pandemic and this and the response and the government and the states. So anyway, I say all of that and it's like, here we are. And I don't know. I'm passionate about the idea that like wherever I am in the country or the world, when I connect with real humans, even if we happen to disagree, whether it's about politics or religion or anything else, like the closer I get to other humans, it just, without sounding corny or cliched about it, it's like, it's really hard to hate people up close. And we usually have way more alike than we do different once we really start to get to know each other as human beings. And I think in this world where we mostly connect by text and Slack and email and social media message and DM and comment and and on video, which technology is amazing. I live super close to Silicon Valley and work with a lot of Silicon Valley companies, but like, I just feel like it's important for us to remember, like, we're fellow humans on the journey. And I mean, again, from the time I was really little, I used to always even say to my mom, like, who's the them? When we talk about them, like, I don't understand who the them is.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And look, I mean, I was a competitive athlete. Like sometimes the them was the other team, right? Or I'm not, but on a human level, like, where is the them?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I definitely grew up with a lot of them kind of talk that was going on. Like, it was like, okay, is it the government? Is it the banks? Is it the politician? Is it the institution of government? Is it the other church? Like, who's the bad guy?
Well, and that's part of it. I mean, look, it is part of being human. We want to blame it on someone. We want to understand. We all want to be the hero of our own story. We all want to be on the good team. But I had an experience. So I grew up in a house, not very religious, but my mother grew up Roman Catholic in Rhode Island and went to Catholic school and was kind of traumatized by the experience and wasn't into Catholicism. She meets my dad in San Francisco in the late 60s. My dad grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, and my dad was Jewish. So they get together, they get married. And it's back in the late 60s, even in San Francisco, like for a Catholic and a Jew to get married wasn't super common. Yeah. It was like kind of a thing for both of their families. My dad was divorced and had his first wife. They had a baby back in, there's a lot of things going on that nowadays would be like, that's not that big of a deal, but it was a big deal. So they get together, they end up getting divorced when I'm like 3. But my mom takes us to a Lutheran church in the neighborhood because she's a single mom with 2 young kids and she finds some community there. Apparently the Lutheran service is somewhat similar to a Catholic mass. So my mom actually felt kind of comfortable there and the church was pretty chill. I don't know any of this. I'm a kid, right? So I grew up going to this church and I liked the church. I had friends at the church. I did find some of the religious stuff a little confusing because we didn't talk about it a lot at home. I didn't totally understand it. I end up now as a teenager, I go into confirmation class, right? So I'm with other teenagers and now we're going to get confirmed as Lutheran and I'm in the youth group. And now I'm like, and the minister, nice guy, pretty young guy. I remember raising my hand at one point, like a couple months into confirmation class. And I'm like, hey, what's the right religion? And he's like, excuse me? I said, which one's the right one? I was like, look, we're going to spend all this time getting confirmed as Lutherans. My understanding is this is like a certain sect of Protestant Christianity, but there's also Catholicism. It's a little different. I don't understand the differences. And my dad is Jewish. There's people in the world that are Muslims and Buddhists and like other ones. And then some people don't believe in God. Like, which one's the right one? Because if I'm going to commit, I want to make sure I'm doing the right one. And this poor guy, I'm like 13, 14 years old. And he's looking at me and the guy's like 30, right? He's like, well, I got this kid. But he didn't give me a very satisfactory answer. And I just remember saying to him, look, I'm not sure if I believe in God or not. I think I do. But if there is a God, I don't think whatever God is looking down and going, everyone's wrong except for those Lutherans. Like, that doesn't make sense given what we're learning about God or Jesus or any of this stuff. It's all about love and acceptance and compassion. I could never square it up for me. And again, at the time, I'm not trying to be like difficult or holier than thou, no pun intended, but I was just like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And to this day, even at 50, almost 51 years old, like my spiritual life is super important to me and has been since I was in college, since I came through that depression and really felt like I created a relationship with God, with spirit, with the divine. But it wasn't about Christianity or Judaism for me. It wasn't about Buddhism or Hinduism or it was just about like, oh, I feel connected to all that is, to a much higher power, that I'm clear, like my life, and I believe all of our lives are sort of divinely impacted and influenced in all these ways. But my experience of spirituality and of God has always been about connection and oneness with other humans and with the planet. It's never been about my side and my book and my rules are better than your side and your book and your rules. And listen, I say this knowing this is touchy to talk about because people have very strong feelings. I understand, but like, And I love actually learning about religions and learning about people's faith traditions. And like, there are a lot of really devout religious people that are in my life and that I know that I have an enormous amount of respect and appreciation for. If that's the road that leads them to God, I love it. But I struggle with it even to this day of like, how do we talk about these things? How do we understand these things? How do we live in community? And especially in a place like the US where it can be tricky.
Yeah. Well, I grew up Jehovah's Witness. So I did have a religion that said we were the right one.
You were the right ones. Oh, I know.
We
I know
were the right ones.
Yeah.
And everybody else was going to die.
Oh gosh, that's hardcore.
So yeah, so we learned a certain level of superiority. Like for me as a child, like judgment, superiority, and then also like a lot of self-flagellation, like we are sinners. So it's deeply confusing because you're like, I'm terrible, I'm a sinner, and Satan's always trying to get me and trying to get me away from God, and God is always pissed at me because I'm never going to do anything right. But God. Also I'm better than everybody else, and I need to tell them to come over and do this religion. And also I'm supposed to act like a slave because having money or wanting anything for yourself is just ridiculous.
Oh my
like
God.
How dare you? So it's
hardcore.
Deeply confusing.
That's super confusing, right? Because it's like on the one hand, you're terrible, you're bad, you're supposed to be apologizing for just being your humanity. And then on the other hand, better than the rest of those people that don't know how bad they are, right?
Yes.
They don't get they're sinners and they're, oh my God. So I mean, I know you're interviewing me, but like, what was your journey through that process and sort of to where you are now in terms of how you reconciled that or navigated that? Because that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's been a journey. For sure. I left the church at 14. When I was little, I had these questions. My dad, one of them was, we're going to live forever on paradise earth as humans, but only the Jehovah's Witnesses are. And we're going to be reproducing and we're going to be perfect. So nobody's going to get sick or injured or any of that. So my question one night to my dad was, well, how does that work? The earth is like, just has this much space, and we're going to be living forever and reproducing forever, and we're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's not going to be room. So how's that going to work? And he was very angry, did not like that question, didn't have a good answer for it, insulted me. And then another one that I really couldn't deal with was that women are supposed to be in subjection to their husbands.
Yes.
And for me, being a very intelligent girl, I was like, what if the wife is smarter? And again, that was not a question that was met with any positive response. So there were things, over and over, like I knew my friends at school and they were perfectly normal people. There was nothing that I thought that they should be killed for at Armageddon. So at 14, I tried to get baptized. And the church, I think I was 12, and they were like, no, you're not ready. And so then I was like, I had done everything I could to be the best girl I could be. And then I was like, all right, I've had enough of this. So at 14, I told my parents, I'm not doing this anymore. And they were like, yes, you are. And so I would go to the church and I would just get my math book out and start doing my homework during the service. And they were so humiliated by that they no longer required me to go. But from there, I had to deprogram myself. And my attempt at that was through atheism.
Okay.
So I did that for a number of years and found it very cold and lonely and frightening. And it wasn't at all my nature. Right. And then, so I think, I was my daughter was born and something was wrong. She had fluid in her lungs.
Okay.
And that was the first time I prayed in, I don't know, I was 30, so 16 years. And, when I left the church, I had gone a little crazy as a teen, moved out of my parents' house, partied, drugs, all the things. And then, wasn't doing well in school for a semester. And so I went back got a little straighter and made sure I got my grades back, because school was my escape from church and home.
Right.
And so academia was my God
Got
for
it.
a number of years.
Yeah.
And
Makes sense.
and I obsessively went to college. Like I have over 200 something college credits.
Oh my God. Your religion became school.
Yes, I was reaching.
Yeah. No,
But yeah, I prayed that time in the hospital when I had my daughter, and the prayer was answered. Like she was back in my arms within 20 minutes, everything fine, perfect. And I was like, oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something I need. This is,
Yeah.
a part of me. So,
Wow.
but it's just been a long time of deprogramming, and I still am deprogramming, because I still find myself like, even though I know how to have self-compassion, reparent, and this and that, the amount of self-judgment that goes on every single day is just, it's intense.
Totally. Wow. I appreciate you sharing all of that. It's funny. I mean, our journeys were obviously very different, and around the same age is when we both went, wait, what? I mean, I didn't have as much to deprogram, and I wasn't in an environment where it was so hardcore. But I do think it's like, for all of us, finding our path to spirituality is a very personal and unique one. I don't think we do a great job sort of collectively, societally, and it's turned into so much of a political conversation, where there's all these rules on the political right in America, and then on the political left, it's sort of seen as, oh, we don't talk about that because, that's something else, like church and state, all the things. But it's like, wait a minute, we could all benefit from having a healthy spiritual life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But being inside of some dogma that says you are this and you're right, but you're terrible and we're the best and they're all right. I mean, that's obviously, you live that and know how problematic that can be. But I also think living in this sense of, atheism and like nothing, again, for people who that's genuinely true for them, I get it. I totally get it. Because I went through a period of time, like my version of that when I was an adolescent. I mean, I remember thinking, and I'm almost embarrassed to even say this out loud, but like the way I reconciled it was like, oh, only stupid people believed in God.
Yeah, I kind of had that too.
Yeah, and that was my safety of superiority. But again, it was actually getting depressed in college and being in so much pain. So I hadn't, like, I wasn't a parent with, but I was like, oh, God, help me, please. And then I'm like, wait, who am I talking to? What am I talking about? But I met a mentor who taught me about spirituality in a very different way, taught me about meditation, taught me about connecting with my own heart. But like, he would say, tap into like your higher self. There's a wiser self. There's like, tap into the essence of God. And even when he would say it, I would cringe. But the more he talked about it, the more I'm like, oh, he's not talking about rules and shame and judgment and Bible and these things. He's not talking about there's one, and he's talking about something that felt to me more universal and I really resonated with. And I was like, oh, that's God? Oh, yeah. I didn't know that was an option. Right? If that's what God is, then I'm interested. I want to learn more. I want to, I want to lean in that direction.
Not outsourcing our power to some being outside of ourselves, but recognizing the divinity within. Yeah. And like learning self-trust.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned your daughter. How old are you have more than one kid?
Yeah, an 8-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. Okay.
Yeah, so we have 2 girls. The oldest is about to turn 19, the youngest is 16. And when our older daughter Samantha was born, she came early and there were some complications. It was kind of intense, but I remember the moment that she came out, and there was this feeling that I had. I remember this essence, this sort of presence in the room. And I was like, wait a minute, this is familiar. I didn't know what it was. And I was so full of emotion and excited and scared, and my wife and the baby, all the things, I'd never been in the room when a baby been born, like most people, especially most males. I'd never seen, and it didn't look anything like the videos in the classes that we took before the day. But it took me a couple days to figure it out. And then I realized, oh, whatever that essence, that presence that I felt in the room, that was the same thing I had felt a few years earlier when my dad died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The context was very different, and my dad dying, and we were in the hospital, and it was very sad, and there were lots of machines and all the things. But I was like, I remember at the very end just feeling that relief that he was out of pain, but also just there was this palpable, and my sister and I both commented on it later, like, did you feel, what was, and then again, for me, it was like, I don't know what that is, and I don't pretend to explain it all, but there was something else that wasn't just the humans and the machines and the bed and the windows. There was, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, to me, it was one of the most visceral experiences I've had. And I've had a few other experiences. We had our second daughter. I've been at the bedside of a few other people who've died since then. And I've similarly, it hasn't been exactly the same every time, but I feel that sense of like the veil is thin and there's something else happening.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's
Yeah.
like, even talking to you about it right now, like I don't talk about this a lot, not that I'm afraid to, but it's just like not something that comes up in casual conversation.
Yeah.
You know,
I can be afraid to talk about it because, like, when I was really young, it was like people crossing over weren't ready and would come and like communicate with me, not with words,
right?
but I could feel them.
Sure.
And it would be some kind of energetic exchange where I would like basically let them know that it was okay and that everything was going to, and you could go. And I was telling my parents about it and they were terrified.
Yeah.
They never said they didn't believe me.
Right.
They instead were terrified. They said it was demonic, the devil, and that I needed to scream in the name of Jehovah, get out. And so I learned to be terrified of it because I wasn't scared of it.
No.
Before that. And then I was like, oh my God, this is bad and scary. So then I was doing that. And then I disconnected from it for a really long time. But then there were times when people would die that I knew, or like I didn't necessarily know them personally, but somebody, and I could feel that come in and be like there and present. And I guess because I had cut it off, I felt like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to. And then I remembered, if I just relax and trust that this is okay and I'm safe and there's nothing wrong happening here, I can just do what comes naturally. And so I just let what happens naturally happen. And it's really just this reassurance of it's okay. It's time to go on.
Yeah.
You're free to go. This is what you need, whatever it is, but not verbally.
Yeah.
So, but I know what that feeling is that you're talking about. And so it happens, and it's sometimes I still get scared. Just the programming it runs deep.
It does, I imagine, for you. But I think, it's interesting. We're talking about death in the sense of like, I've written about this in some of my books and I'll touch on it or I'll speak about it sometimes. And again, like talking about religion or politics, you start talking about death and dying, it gets, I mean, it's sort of, in a classic sense, it's like the opposite of motivational speaking. Let's talk about we're all going to die. It's like, we're glad we brought this guy in. But I think about something a mentor of mine said to me years ago. And he's like, Mike, if you lived your life more aware of your own death, you would live very differently.
So true.
If you thought about the people around you, we have this good friend who she has 3 boys. And her oldest and our oldest were in preschool together. They lived in California. They've since moved to Colorado. We're still really close with them. And our kids have kind of grown up, even though a little far apart, almost like cousins. And when we first met her boys were young. The littlest one was really young. And I remember her name's Joy, and she's so joyful. And I remember asking her one day, how, like, you seem so joyful and you've got 3 and like, we're over here drowning with our 2 and like, what, we're all in that early days of parenting thing. And she goes, oh, it's really simple for me. And I said, what? She goes, I just think about them dying all the time. And I was like, but she didn't say it with that like paranoid, vigilant thing that often as parents we do, right? I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, our youngest, Forrest, like almost died in the hospital. And it was terrifying. And she said, but it woke me up to the reality of like, that could happen.
Yeah.
She's like, so now when I get stressed about something or they're making a mess or they're driving me crazy or whatever, I just think, what if they were dead? What if one of them was dead? Like that would be a whole different, like I can deal with them smacking each other upside the head or spilling the milk on the floor or making me crazy or waking me up in the middle of the night. Like I don't love that stuff, but I'm not going to get all bent out of shape about it when if he was dead, this would be a very different life and a very different family, and I'd be in a very different place. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. The things we get upset about are so trivial.
Yeah. And it's like, what, you know, again, and how do we stay in that mindset without having to go through tragedy to do it? Because that is one of the silver linings of tragedy, of deep, deep pain, of deep loss and grief. It does tend to wake us up to the good stuff we weren't paying attention to. It does tend to put things in perspective. And I have both struggled in my life, but also tried in my work in some way to like, how can I remind myself? How can I remind others? A big part of my work has always been focusing on gratitude and appreciation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's easy to be grateful when things are great. But most of the time, if things aren't great, like not awesome all the time and everything humming along. I mean, but there's things happening in the world, in life. I mean, sometimes we can even feel guilty when things go well for us because we know other people are suffering.
Yeah.
That is one of the things. I think it's part of the reason why most of us have a love-hate relationship with social media, because it's so much comparison. So you can scroll one thing and feel terrible about yourself. Look at that person. They're so beautiful and successful and happy. And the next scroll, it's like, oh my God, so-and-so's dog just died or some terrible thing or their kid. And you're like, oh, now I feel, and it's like,
I'm so lucky.
Right. It's an emotional roller coaster just scrolling for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And like, that is life, but I don't think we're designed to be connected with that many people and that many people's stories. Right. So we don't know how to process it all.
Yeah. It's system overwhelm. It's like energy overwhelm. It's how do you acclimate? Like we're in a physical body, like we're unlimited beings, right? But we're here in a physical body and there's limitation to that. And we're having that experience on purpose, right?
Totally.
Like, so let's allow it to be what it is. It requires some slowness. We can't be productive all the time.
Totally.
We can't have these emotional ups and downs all the time like that. It's exhausting.
Totally. Well, and it's also, I try to remind myself when I start to get spun out about what's happening in the country, what's happening in the world, or even with my own family, most of that, I have a tendency to worry. I have a tendency to future trip and do that, like I think a lot of humans do. But like one of the techniques I learned years ago was just to like touch my own body, take breaths, like look around the room and just like say to myself, you're safe, you're okay, right here, right now, you're okay. Even if something quote unquote terrible is happening, it's like, that was one of the ways when I got really depressed in college the first time. I remember the moment it broke. It wasn't like a transformation overnight, but I was really deeply, deeply depressed, and it was scary. And, you know, my father had suffered for most of his adult life, bipolar disorder. And, you know, in those days, I mean, my dad was born in 1933. Like he dropped out of college and they sent him to a mental institution because he was really depressed, where he got electroshock therapy and tranquilizers. And in those days, they literally called it like the funny farm. There was like, you talk about stigmatization in those days. This is the 50s in Connecticut. Anyway, so, but my father's mental health struggles had really impacted his life in a very negative way. And ultimately, you know, it was a big, painful experience for us growing up with my dad being sick in this way that we couldn't understand. It was hard to talk about, and there was all this shame around it. But so me getting depressed was the combination of the depression, which was awful. If anyone's been depressed, they know how terrifying and painful that is. But then it was the added piece of like, oh shit, I'm going to be just like my dad. This is going to be, right, the belief system baked in. Oh no, I caught it from him. You know, there's a, you know, because look, there is some of this stuff can be hereditary. We didn't know as much about it back in the mid 90s as we do now, but even still. But there was a moment I wasn't sleeping well. I was really freaked out. I'm a junior in college playing baseball and trying to be normal, but like having a hard time just functioning. I wake up in the middle of the night because I wasn't sleeping well, and I go to the refrigerator and I get some like lemonade or something out of the fridge, and I'm trying not to be too loud, so I wake up my roommate, and I'm standing in the kitchen, I'm drinking this lemonade, and I remember having the thought, oh, this tastes good. And as simple as that sounds, it's kind of like you saying you hadn't prayed in 16 years. I had not had a positive thought that I was aware of in months. And I remember having the thought and then having the thought right after, wait a minute, that was a positive thought. Like maybe my brain isn't completely broken. Maybe I haven't lost any sense of there's some sunshine on the other side of these clouds. And again, it wasn't like miraculously my depression went away the next day. No, there was still a long way through that process, but it was like this little sign that I was able to hang on to. Like, it's not completely dark. I think I can find my way to the light if I hang in there. And I think sometimes it's like when things get really challenging or stressful, if we can just bring ourselves back to the present moment, to our breath, to someone we love or something we're grateful for, or look out the window and see a tree or a cloud or a bird or something and go, okay. Right?
Yeah. That becomes the way through. The way through depression is not, it doesn't happen with a pill. A pill works for a temporary, there's a time where you might need the pill for a little bit, but it's never meant to be lived on. So we want this instant solution. We're all about instant gratification, but the practice is finding that moment of light, of gratitude, and then making as many more as you can each day from there. And you'll have days where it's just like sucks you in and you just can't find that moment.
Right.
And then you'll have days where the whole day you were like, oh my gosh, I remember. But it's this really interesting practice and dance of, okay, I'm in this pattern. I'm looking at all of this negative stuff. What do I want to do? Do I like it here? Do I want to stay here? Is this a feeling that I'm enjoying? And some of the things like that I've noticed when I feel the absolute worst and like my body's contracting, it's because I'm believing a thought that isn't true.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And then we get like, I mean, that's the thing. I was listening to a podcast interview this morning with Martha Beck and Mel Robbins, and Martha was talking about, she wrote a book recently on anxiety. And she was basically saying that like human beings are the only species who consciously choose to take their own life. And she wasn't saying it judgmentally. She was like, because our minds are so powerful that what happens is we get to a place in our minds so dark that all we can see is darkness. And so even though we all have an instinct, like a physiological instinct to not want to die, we decide dying is better than feeling whatever we're feeling or walking into that really dark future. And when she said it, I just like, again, it's a super intense topic and the thing to think about, but it just gave me all this empathy and compassion for all of us as humans, whether people who are really suffering and in that really dark place or who have chosen to end their own lives or anywhere. I think almost every human alive has had a thought at some point, like maybe it'd be easier not to be here than deal with this.
Yeah.
And that's scary in and of itself. But I think ultimately that, again, can we talk about those things? Can we not whine and complain about them, but be real about it? I mean, so much of my work comes back to like, I was the kid in school where like, I was a pretty good student like you. I was pretty good at sports. Like I was doing all the things on the surface you were supposed to do to be happy, to be likable, right? But inside, I just had all these thoughts and feelings that were going on. And I kept thinking, especially as a little boy growing up, like, suck it up, be a man, boys don't cry, all that BS. But I was like, is anyone else feeling any of this? Is anyone else like, even like high school, it's like, we're going to teach you the Pythagorean theorem. And I'm like, how about how I feel so awkward in my body and I don't know how to talk to girls? Can someone talk to me about that? You know what I mean? Like, where's that class? I could really use that right about now. Or, like my mom's a single mom. We don't have a lot of money. I'm embarrassed to have people come over to my house. Like, is there a book about that? That's what drew me to those self-help books in those days when I was struggling. Cause I'm like, I don't want to read about history and political science and biology. Not that those things aren't important, but like, I want stuff that's going to help me in my real life as I'm trying to navigate humaning, which I'm finding back then and even sometimes now kind of challenging. Right.
Yeah.
Well, all the time I look at Michelle, my wife, sometimes about parenting, and I'm just like, where the hell? This was not in the manual. Like, I don't know how are we supposed to respond to this, right? It's like,
Yeah, it's funny. Well, I think a lot of times school is meant to kind of distract us from ourselves, from our own sense of empowerment and self-trust, because we're just being trained to be little minions, worker bees,
right.
Feed the machine.
Right.
Right. And a religion has turned into that as well. I think it's getting better. They're starting to move into more of, what people are actually demanding, which is I want to feel good and I want to talk about love. I want to, so ultimately I think we're changing and we're starting to be allowed to talk about mental health and not feel like there's something wrong with us and broken.
Right.
Like the whole idea about chemical imbalances and multiple personality disorder. Like we have a whole different frame on that now.
Totally.
We're not seeing it as a chemical imbalance. We're seeing trauma. Trauma happens, it changes our DNA and it creates neural pathways in the brain, and we keep feeding them. Well, or we can create new ones that are just different. But that's work.
It's so true. I saw this funny cartoon. My wife and I were laughing about it. It's a guy he's laying on a couch, like in a shrink's office. And he said, I had a really traumatic childhood, especially in the last 5 years. And it's like, a lot of things that we just thought were normal. That was just life. That was just, it's like, no, that was traumatic. And again, not to over dramatize it, but just realize like, oh, wow, like that really, hearing a little bit of your story growing up, I can only imagine, wow, like that's pretty intense and traumatic to navigate through that. And most of us, again, no matter how sort of extreme our stories may be, it's like, oh yeah, I picked up a lot of thoughts and ideas and beliefs about myself, about life. Maybe those things aren't necessarily true.
Yeah.
But we live like they are.
We do. We think, our thought patterns are the only ones really available to us until we start questioning them and looking at. That's one of the reasons I think you mentioned also, it's like learning about other religions. There are similarities between all of them. And so like there are universal truths there are connection points between all of it. I don't know if you've heard of Carolyn Mace, but she's like a theologian. Mm-hmm. And so she came up with the 7 common themes that all religions share.
Yep.
And I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, but that can be looked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate. I had my uncle, so my mom's younger sister's husband lives in Texas. He's a therapist and has been, for me, from the time I was very young, could sort of see in me that I was a seeker and interested. He used to send me cassette tapes of Wayne Dyer, of Carolyn Mace. He would send me books when I was in college. Things, again, stuff that like Thomas More, The Seat of the Soul, or Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God, these type of things that, again, like, but he understood that I was, and some of it I could read or listen to and it made sense. Some of it was like, Martha Beck was saying on this podcast with Mel Robbins, so funny, she kept saying this thing, hear me now, understand me later. And at one point, Mel started laughing, but it's like, that was a lot of my young life of just hearing things that I didn't understand, but I energetically resonated with. I'm like, I think there's some truth in that. And it wasn't even like, it's not like I'm too dumb to understand, but I just hadn't lived enough life to really get what that,
yeah.
But things like Carolyn Mace, it was like, oh, wow, like maybe the world isn't the way that I think it is. Maybe it's not just this cause and effect world that I've been living inside of. Maybe there's more happening here. Because even to your point about the questions you had, just like the questions that I had, it's like, wait, we're going to live forever? That doesn't make sense. How come, why wouldn't other people? Do you know what I mean? Or there's something wrong over there, or then something happens that doesn't square with what we've been being taught. And then you're like, for me, it was also going to the doctor when I first started having some sports injuries. I went to the doctor and they didn't get better. And then I was like, well, okay, but what else is there? And they're like, well, these are what we can do. We can give you a pill, you can go to physical therapy, or we can cut you open. Like that's really the only 3 options they have when you have like an elbow injury when you're a pitcher, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then just going to a chiropractor or going to an acupuncturist, again, totally mainstream now. 30 years ago, not super mainstream, but I started to do that. And then it was like, oh, do you know there's a connection between your mind and your body? What?
Right.
My thoughts, my beliefs, my attitudes. It's not, and what you eat and what you drink and how you're breathing and all and I was like, what? No one ever told me that, So then it was just this whole, again, so many people listening to us and watching us, like this stuff is now very, not basic, but like, of course we understand this now.
Yeah.
But like the integration of all of those things, that I'm not just this bag of bones walking around and bumping into things. Like there's more happening. And that's back to, I think, even you being tapped into your intuition and people crossing over and coming to communicate with you. Like, that's, again, weird to say out loud in certain environments.
Yeah.
But also not that weird if you've ever experienced it.
Right.
Or even if you haven't. I do find also another beautiful thing, is weird to say it, around death, is that people do talk about a lot of mystical things when someone dies. People you wouldn't expect. Like, people will tell you they love you. People will start telling you stories of their grandfather who used to come to their dreams, and you're like, whoa, I just, okay, Bob, interesting, like, but there's like a permission around birth and death, but especially death, where people will come out of the woodwork with stories about it. And I friggin' love it, because I'm like, why aren't we just talking about this all the time?
Right. We get so focused on productivity that we think that's a waste of time to talk about. But back to that mind-body connection, I tore my MCL in June, and everyone around me, I didn't go to the doctor, but everyone around me was like, you haven't gone to the doctor? Like, what do you mean? Like, I was like, no, I know what it is. Like, I can diagnose it myself. I don't need an x-ray. I know exactly what it is. I know, there's enough YouTube videos out there that tells me which part of the knee, and I took anatomy and physiology, and I took kinesiology and nutrition and all the things. And now all this personal development work, and I used rest, ice, my own physical therapy exercises that I came up with. I meditated, I visualized healing, and I did it. And and people were like, you'll never be the same, and you can't heal this yourself. This is so dangerous. I can't believe you're doing this. And I did it, and it took 12 weeks, because I did take a whole month and went camping, like, not in an RV, but like tent camping. And so I was kind of hiking, and, but also strength training and movement are hugely important. And that visualization, that meditation, that mindset, the breathing, the being aware, like the allowing myself to feel the pain. I did take ibuprofen and Tylenol for the first week, to help with the swelling and stuff, but I knew what to do. So I didn't need to go to a doctor, and I knew it had to be a whole body thing. I knew I had to pay attention to what I was eating, how much I was resting, all the things. Right. And I'm not recommending that other people do that. No. I'm just saying, if you know something, you know it.
Well, the thing is, I also think it's really important, I think, to listen to ourselves and listen to our bodies. And I'm of the opinion, if you decided to go to the doctor and have an x-ray and an MRI and great. If you decided not to do that, great. Or if you decide some version in between, look, even when you go to the doctor and they do all the tests and they run all the things, or they cut you open and they do it all. I mean, I've had personal experience. I had 4 surgeries on my arm, and like, I wasn't able to come back and play baseball. Yeah. But I've now since learned that my understanding of it is like, if I was really meant to, I would have. Mm-hmm. And I didn't. And it was painful at the time, and I was disappointed, and I was frustrated. But I think a lot of times, back to what we're talking about, whether it's religion or it's doctors or it's the news or whatever, when we start believing things completely just because so-and-so said it, or just because it's in this book, or and nowadays, where there's like so much misinformation, disinformation, it's hard to know, like, where can I go to get? I mean, that's where I also feel like it's really important for us to go back to the basics and like connect with the people around us who we know and trust, and then find credible sources of information that we're trying to figure out, so that we can educate ourselves, whether it's about health, whether it's about public policy, whether it's about how we raise our kids or whatever. But like, long before the internet, people still had ways to find information out.
Yeah.
And somehow people survived,
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the important things to look at when we're looking for credible information is that it's not super extreme, where it says that this way is the only way and the right way, and they are totally wrong, and there's no truth to that. There's truth in the middle. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
There's always a right aspect and maybe an incorrect aspect, but again, a lot of it is, we don't know as much as we'd like to believe that we know.
And so much of it, what we're looking for is control and guarantees.
Yeah.
And a lot of things, they just don't exist.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going back even to just understanding and embracing the fragility of life. It's like, we're going to, physically, we're going to die at some point. We all hope to be healthy for as long as possible and live these long, wonderful lives. But like, we don't know.
Don't know.
And that's oftentimes the biggest, I think, source of pain is just the avoiding the reality of that and trying to think, even for those of us, myself included, want to be healthy. It's like, I'm going to drink this green juice and I'm going to meditate like this and I'm going to do these breathing exercises. I'm going to all this somehow like, and then at the end, I'm going to live to be 500 years old and never have it. It's like, wait, what? It's not, when you hear of some really healthy person who dies and then you're just like, but it's like, well, that's
right. Yeah. And then
this person who did all these unhealthy things and they lived to be 105 and you're like,
right.
Like it's some kind of competition or there's some arbiter in the sky going, okay, you had too many cigarettes, you're out, but you had enough green juice, you get to, that's not the way it works.
No. It's so funny. Just the desire for that guarantee, but also I have that desire. I want that guarantee and I want that safety and I want to know what's going on and I want control and every day is a practice of letting go of it.
Yep.
Because that grasping and that attachment is what causes suffering.
Yep.
That's more suffering than any of the bad things that actually happen. Like the bad things happen and then you realize you're still alive and you're like, oh, I'm still here. Oh, but if I continuously obsess that thing changed and I'm resisting it and it's already happened, that's where my suffering is coming from.
Totally. It's Byron Katie says, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. And that's often what we're doing is it shouldn't be. And it is. It's not that you have to give up, but you just like have to, at some level, we got to surrender and accept to like, this is what is right now. If I'm going to change it, it's not going to be by fighting against it or resisting it or running away from it or sticking my head in the sand and pretending like it's not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that this conversation is really helpful to the audience and we're over time. So thank you for being here. It's been really fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And tell everybody where they can find you and
look, I'm on all the socials, but the best place to find me is at our website, which is mike-robbins.com. So that's just MIKE-ROBBINS.com.
Amazing.